What's up, you crazy fuckers? How goes it on the YouTube channel? Yep. King Cobra JFS back at you, Cool Cobras, with another video response. There is a content warning with this video I'm about to watch. It contains topics of suicide and sexual assault. Fuck both of those things. Okay, so I want to word this as carefully as I can. That way people aren't, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you got to be 4 steps ahead of people. So there is a YouTuber by the name of Boe Chanel. I don't know. You want to see the video I'm doing a response to? I will plug it in the chat real quick before I get ready for the day. There's the video that I'll be doing a video response to. Let's just crack open a Mountain Dew and do the video response. Why, YouTube? Why? We are live on the King Cobra JFS channel. What's up, you crazy cobras? We're about to do a video response. TikTok Roma Army and the politics of equality. The politics of equality. I do declare. Politics are annoying regardless if they're political or not. But there's politics in almost everything. And this is going to touch into some racial and gender equality. And yeah, we're just going to tell it like it is. And if that offends you, there's the back button. Now, Roma Army recently posted a video which featured a relative in the background saying some things, and I watched the video once. It made me feel creeped out, uncomfortable, and sad, and I was like, no. And I unsubscribed because of it. On the side notes, her other content that she does where she fights for gender equality, I like those videos. I will genuinely support Roma Army regardless because it's nice to see a female who cares about men's rights. After all, the pursuit of gender equality, women want men to support their rights but refuse to support ours. It doesn't work like that, ladies. And here's the thing of it. Sometimes you just gotta man up and support women's rights regardless if they support you or not. And sure, they might call you a simp. They might say you're just trying to get laid. Fuck them. Now, after learning about what Roma Army went through as a woman with her piece of shit excuse of scumfuck ex, I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with people, dude? I seriously wanted to find that scrawny piece of shit of her ex and, you know, and I'm like, you know what? Karma will get his ass. No sense in me catching an assault charge and putting a piece of shit male in his place. Winning. So another YouTuber has done a response to Roma Army. We're going to see what that video response is. And this video is going to contain some graphic content. Fuck suicide, fuck sexual assault, and fuck all the bullshit in our society. I'm seriously over it. You know, it's kind of like one of those people suck, I need a beer t-shirts. Yes. I actually have one myself. They're quite fun. People go, what does your shirt say? And I stretch it out. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. That's funny. Because it's the truth. Kind of like it's a Monday t-shirt, only it's funnier because that applies to pretty much every day of the week, right? Just kidding. The people suck. I need a beer shirt. I will pop that in the chat. If you want to buy one, it's super appreciated. However, alcohol is not for people 21 until you're 21 and up. Nonetheless, it's a funny shirt. Ah, boy, here we go. Video response. Content warning. The video you're about to watch contains discussion of horrible things and depressing shit. Got your beer and your soda pop ready? Ready? You got your tobacco ready? Ready? All right.
In 2018, popular YouTuber Natalie Wynn, also known as ContraPoints, released a video called Tiffany Tumbles. In this video, Wynn simulates a sort of Platonian-style debate between two fictional trans YouTubers on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Tiffany, the far-right YouTuber, grapples with the tension between her marginalized identity as a trans woman and a yearning to blend in with the dominant population. To appease this tension, Tiffany, distances herself from the trans community to position herself as one of the good ones in the name of equality.
Adria, you're the reason why everyone hates trans people. You're obnoxious and offended by everything, and everyone feels like they have to tread on eggshells around you. Thank you, Tiffany. See, you're one of the good ones. You're a good trans.
Now, while I have no authority to...
Yeah, here we go. It's gonna be one of those videos. It's just a roller coaster of what the fucks and why is this?
Speak to the nuances of trans identity. I think this scenario applies quite well to the case of Roma Army. With over 600,000 followers, Roma Army is a TikTok account run by a Canadian woman named Chloe Sunderland, who has proclaimed herself the spearhead of a true equality movement.
We want equality. Women should be equal to men, no matter what. We can do anything he can do. Well, perfect. All right, so let's start by supporting male victims, combating female violence, giving women the same prison sentencing as men, supporting male victims, signing women up for the... What the fuck? Not that kind of equality.
Distancing herself from what she calls
Here's what I find really admirable about Chloe, in all honesty. When you hear her survival story and the fact that she still advocates for men's rights despite meeting one of the biggest pieces of shit You know what I'm saying? It's beyond admirable. It's just like you have no idea. I have no idea. And when I learned about shit like that, it just made me think, you know what? Why the fuck are you bitching about your dry spell? There are people out there who are in abusive relationships, and you want to bitch because you don't have an of-age girlfriend. Where?
Modern-day feminism, Chloe covers a wide range of topics regarding men's rights, issues she argues are constantly undermined and neglected by said modern-day feminism.
You know, if we're fighting for gender equality, the first thing you have to realize is that to some degree there is an equal fight when it comes to gender equality. If women fight for men's rights, they get called weak. You're not a real woman. If men try to fight for women's rights, we get called simps. We get told, you know what I'm saying, that you're just trying to get laid, and it's bullshit. There are genuinely people out there who do care. It's just they get overshadowed by the extremists and the assholes, as usual. Now, if I had a choice between beating up the piece of shit ex that this one had to deal with, or beating up my trolls and getting away with it, and I mean really doing some damage, I'd choose beating up this one's ex, honestly, because my trolls are pieces of shit, but this guy is just next level. It honestly makes me disgusted that there are men out there like that. It just, ooh, dude, And the thing of it is, like, Roma Army came from a third world country where women really were oppressed. In the Western world, for the most part, women have rights. And what have I been saying on my channel? If modern feminism evolved to fight for equality so women everywhere had rights and that men also have the same rights, it would be more equal, wouldn't it? Because, as Roma Army said, feminism, according to Google, says it is a definition of female equality based off of what? Gender equality. Now, gender equality is a bitch because you have to acknowledge that women are just as tough as men and that men can be just as emotional as women. And that scares both sides.
Despite the frequent misinformation and logical fallacies present in her arguments,
men don't take up 40% domestic violence victims. They're 60. They're 60. They're 60.
It depends on the area. It really depends on the area you live in. There are some third world countries where men are totally allowed to beat the shit out of their woman and they get away with it. It's fucking disgusting. You know the countries I'm talking about. I'm not going to name nationalities and be labeled a racist for calling out spousal abuse. In a Western society, spousal abuse can be higher for men because women get away with it. You look at cases like Johnny Depp. That doesn't mean that there aren't pieces of shit out there that do shit like that. In recent studies, we found that Marilyn Manson might be accused of being a spousal abuser. That's pretty fucked because he makes good music, but that just kind of makes you look at things differently. Like, wow, what the Then there are certain countries, I'm not going to name names, you know who you are, who just allow spousal abuse in public. Like if your wife dare shows ankle. And, well, when you got other countries fighting for their own democracy, unless they're attacking your friends around the world, stay the fuck out of it. And nuclear warfare should be put on the Geneva Code for banned weapons. I mean, and this is the thing of it, if you Google this statistic, you'll get mixed reports. So like I said, I think it depends on the area you live in. But fuck spousal abuse for that matter. I mean, unless your other half's into being spanked, then that's totally different. Behave, Josh. Things you suddenly hated as a kid, you love as an adult. Spankings, being told go to your room. Okay, stop. Nope. One site cites that over 43 million women and 38 million men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime. From 1994 to 2010, about 4 in 5 victims of intimate partner violence were female. So statistics can change depending on how social standards change, I guess, is the thing. Because these are very, very old studies, 1994 to 2010. It's 2021, get real. More than 1 in 3 women, 35.6%, and more than 1 in 4 men, 28.5%, in the United States have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Yeah, and this is the thing of it. When it happens to men, the world is shocked to find out that women are just as creepy and perverted as men and just as manipulative. They get shocked. They're just appalled. Like if a woman farts, if men do it, they're just, oh, well, what do you expect? Men are gross. But if women do it, it's like, oh, what? And the shitty reality of it is, YouTube, is that quite frankly, both sides do it. Regardless of who it happens to more, that is kind of an issue because it varies depending on the country and region and social standards, but it also has to do with the simple fact that it happens to both sides. But if we refuse to acknowledge when it happens to one side and then completely focus on it when it happens to another side, it's not an equal fight. And that's just how it is, man. Nearly 3 in 10 women, 29%, and 1 in 10 men, 10% in the U.S. have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by a partner and report a related impact on their functioning. Yeah, there are some crazy people out there who do dumb shit. And honestly, that's why you gotta be careful who you date. You shouldn't be in a rush to date people. This is precisely why you should not be in a rush to date, because there are some people out there who just need to work on their issues. Like my trolls, for instance.
Roma Army's cause is seemingly virtuous. The crux of her movement is this. If the definition of feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes, then we should be fighting for women's and men's rights equally.
That makes sense to me, man. If the definition of feminism is gender equality on the basis of female equality or what have you, it's, yeah, female equality on the basis of, you know what I mean, gender equality. If the foundation of it is on the basis of gender equality, I think modern feminism should focus on ending oppression for women everywhere and fighting for men's rights so that everyone is to some degree content. You can't make everyone happy, you know. So when I hear what Roma Army says on the basis of feminism, that we should all be equal, it's like I said, you can't expect men to fight for women's rights if women aren't allowed to fight for men's rights, and etc. etc. You know, and you can't expect women to fight for men's rights if men aren't willing to fight for women's rights. It's the yin and the yang, the balance.
So she endeavors to demonstrate that both men and women are equally oppressed, and to give men the platform to discuss issues that she believes are constantly overshadowed in our post-Me Too society. And while her
Okay, the Me Too society gets a really bad name because there are some whiny motherfuckers who need to check their privilege, and just because there are certain movements for certain people to show that they're just as important too, the other side takes it as, oh, well, they're getting more attention than me. Well, and it's just like, no, you uneducated idiots.
videos have gained widespread popularity and affirmation, Chloe never seems to
Well, take a look at the Black Lives Matter movement, for instance. It's an awesome movement. It's there to show everyone else that blacks are just as important as whites, Asians, etc. And whiny Me Too activists who give the Me Too movement a bad name are throwing a racist bitch fit because, you know, those all lives matter assholes. We'll get to that in a second.
articulate the source of all this oppression. Her brand of activism fights under the amorphous, apolitical banner of equality, but it leaves behind an important question. If equality is the end, does that make it the means?
Well, that's just it. If you try to fight for true equality, there's still going to be people out there who get offended. You know, and then there's those moments where is it equal or is it bullshit, you know? And I hate bringing this up, but look at transgendered athletes. I said it. You have dudes who have spent their entire lives reaping the benefits of testosterone, working out, and growing up as men and becoming muscly and tall. And then they're not big enough to kick ass in their own gender sports. And they're so desperate for a trophy and attention, they're like, hey, you know what? Which is shit, because there are some people who actually think they are what they are, and that's just fine. That's their choice. But here's the thing of it. There's those assholes who do it because they want attention. And unfortunately, gender equality is no different in that respect. You get these assholes who fight for it just because they want some pussy or they want attention or whatever, and it's bullshit because they get people like me who actually give a fuck. And, you know, it's just, it's exhausting.
Now, a major criticism of minority activism is this. In the Western world, we are all equal in the eyes of the law, so at this point, you're just fighting for special treatment. If you wanted true equality, you would call your movement humanism or all lives matter.
Oh, don't give me that crap. Okay, the reason why you don't call it all lives matter is because there were some people out there who just, they just shouldn't exist. People who hurt people, you know what I'm saying? Real sick fucks and shit like that. I hate to say it, but if Ted Bundy were still alive today, would his life matter? Is that a little too far? But you want to sit there and, you know what I'm saying? But we as a society determine that because it's called morals. When we talk about equality in this sense, we're talking about equality for men, women, and trans, gays, etc. Talking about racial equality. People who are sitting there saying, hey, we don't give a fuck if you're gay, straight, lesbian, trans, queer, white, black, polka dotted, yellow, green, purple, whatever. If you're a decent person, you deserve to have equality just like anyone else who's decent. And that's the simple basis of it. But these idiots don't fucking understand it. And it's like, oh, just wait. It gets even juicier. 18 minutes and 2 seconds of video response.
This is a major argument used by Tiffany. It's an argument that pops up occasionally on my TikTok feed, and it's one that often pops up in conversations about Black Lives Matter. In a discussion I recently had about Black Lives Matter, the person I was speaking to said, if white people had 2 cupcakes and black people had none, instead of each group getting 1 cupcake, black people would demand 2.
Oh my God, whoever made that cupcake comparison is the dumbest fucking idiot on the planet. Jesus fucking Christ, is a cunt. Ridiculous. Fucking ridiculous. Okay, racial equality would look like this. If white people had 2 cupcakes and black people had none, they each get 1 and everyone's happy. Not whatever the fuck this is. Oh my God, dude. My phone's blowing up at the moment. Ignoring that. Yeah, I'm gonna do a live stream, get ready for the day, do my thing. But honestly, YouTube, this is ridiculous. Some lives matter, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, Red Lives Matter, power to the people, man. I'm serious. Excuse me, I got a soda burp. Ooh, suppress that. There we go. Anyways, back to the video.
This is similar to the common sentiment that modern-day feminism is all about supremacy.
Well, it's not necessarily about female supremacy. It's more or less about female equality, but the radical feminazis have infiltrated the movement to such a degree that whenever you think of feminist, the first word feminist, the image that pops into your head is some crazy lady with her crazy colored hair with her tits hanging out that says fuck the patriarchy written across her tits, and then she's holding up a picket sign that says men are pigs and screaming into a bullhorn about female oppression. Now, if men were to walk down the street, pop a Viagra to give them a 4-hour boner and hold up signs that say women are bitches, all they want your money, and then they'd be like, why are you swinging your boners in the wind? And if they said they were protesting rape against men, it wouldn't go over so well. They'd be told that's indecent exposure, you're going to jail, you're being put on a list, fucking nasty. My point being is, ladies, you shouldn't have to do that kind of shit to make your voice be heard. And radical feminism has destroyed the feminist movement. Instead of fighting for female equality all over the world, you're contained to your little snowflake safe space, and it's ridiculous.
A sentiment espoused frequently by Roma Army.
It's because I really struggle with the Western world version of female oppression. Because I come from a third world country where I believe women are legitimately oppressed. Now I understand.
Right there, ladies and gentlemen, it's called perspective. It's called perspective. Roma Army grew up in a third world country where women were way more oppressed than women in a Western society were oppressed. Facts.
Comparing oppression is wrong, but in my eyes, there's no comparison. I believe that the Western world has bred entitlement. Instead of men and women just looking at each other and being like, hey, let's be friends. It's who dominates the other.
The assumption that the
Yep. In the Western society, that is the freaking truth. So, like in a Western society, you have men and women trying to dominate each other. And then in third world countries, you have women who are just flat out oppressed. But the flip argument to that is in the Western society, both women and men are oppressed, and both women and men have privilege. Are you with me on this? It's a lot to think about, and you know what I'm saying? It's chaotic, it's unpredictable. But because of this, you think that women would be fighting for equality all over the world instead of being the biggest hypocrites and oppressing men, and never ending the cycle. Because then if men start becoming oppressed to the point where they start bitching about it and thinking, hey, you know what? This ain't fair on us. We're not born knowing that the world that we're being born into has already done some fucked up shit. I truly want equality for women and minorities. And growing up in a world where you're born into privilege, and having that thrown in your face all the time when you're a decent person who actually cares about the issues, it's bullshit, dude. And you can't bitch about it because that's just how it is. You accept it and you be humble about it. That's all you can do. And if you continue to fight for the good issues, something might happen. You might change the way people think of things. You might not.
these movements want supremacy presupposes that we live in an already equal society. Here's the thing, though. Although we may all appear to be equal de jure, meaning in law, this does not mean we're all equal de facto, meaning in practice.
Again, this is a really complex conversation to have because according to some people who want to stretch it, and by law, like morals and overall good people kind of thing, you think, yes, like I said earlier, it shouldn't matter if you're a decent person, then equality of the sexes and equality of the races doesn't sound like a bad thing at all, to be honest. But in practice, no, because people have had to struggle with these issues for a long time.
Okay, take this example. According to the Center for American Progress, Black Americans own approximately 1/10 of the wealth of white Americans. In 2016, the median wealth for non-retired Black households 25 years and older was less than 1/10 that of similarly situated white households. Now, if we're to take the humanist.
Okay, so right off the bat, I feel like that's a stereotype. It really depends on the person, and here's the kicker of it. You could have a black dude and a white dude. They could both grow up in poor families, broken systems, etc. Both of them will say, you know what? They don't want to make a future like that for themselves, so they break out of that system and they make something of themselves. They both become successful, and they both make decent money. And right off the bat, people will assume because the dude's white, oh, he got there because of his privilege. That's not to say that white privilege isn't a thing, because it is, and it sucks, because it affects the system the way it does. But at the same time, this just means that if you have people who come from similar situations, it's going to be an issue about skin color again. And systematically, it's like 1950 versus 2021. Not even almost 100 years later, and racism is still, it's better, but it's also bad. You know what I'm saying? You see a system flip itself. Back in the day, if you were sexist towards a woman, no one thought twice of it, and women were sick of it. But now, if you're sexist to a woman, oh golly, you'll never hear the end of it. Which just means that boys who are being born into a society where they're being raised to be polite to women like you should be raised, they still get attacked for being sexist like their ancestors were. Is it fair? No, it's not. It's not fair on either side, to be honest. There are people who are born into certain things, and I don't know. I got the window open here. A little chilly.
Argument that we're all born equal, then why does this happen?
Yeah, that is the question. If we're all born equal, then why does it happen? Sometimes shit just happens. And if it happens to play out a certain way, it just plays out a certain way. You know, and it sucks when it does play out that certain way, because it just fits the narrative of race baiting, and that's the thing. Look it up. And I'll give you a really classic example of race baiting. It might offend some people because of your political beliefs. President Barack Obama gets a white dog for his family. Everyone just goes gaga over it. Oh my God, it's so cute. But Trump's family gets a white dog and everyone screams, oh my God, he's such a racist. I'm like, it's a fucking dog. Are we really so racially divided that, you know what I'm saying? I mean, holy crap. It's ridiculous, YouTube. You know what I'm saying? Are we so racially divided in our fucking country? Oh, did you say white? You must be racist. Did you say black? Oh, you must be racist. It's like,
It doesn't add up to say Black Americans are simply less good at making money. So
right?
What's the reason? This is where systemic oppression comes in. The systematic
oppression is a thing, But that's only a small part of it. The other half is racism and the times and the political ideologies that go with it. It's racism in general that's the bigger issue. So because of the racism of the time, the systematic is in place, and that's why you get the oppression. But oppression can happen to anyone, no matter how big or small the issue is. And that's the bitch of it.
Historical and present institutional factors that set people back, thus making these issues systemic. Part of the reason Black communities are systemically poorer than white communities is because, according to another report by the Center for American Progress, for much of the 20th century, households of color were systemically excluded from federal homeownership programs, and government officials largely stood by as predatory lenders, stripping them of wealth and stability. Although the Fair Housing Act banned discriminatory housing practices, many lenders continue to unfairly target people of color with limited federal, state, and local oversight or accountability. Racial segregation has contributed to persistent disparities in access to public goods such as parks, hospitals, streetlights, and well-maintained roads, and has undermined wealth building in communities of color nationwide.
And that actually does happen, and that's what sucks about it. You know, there was a point I made on my channel a couple videos back that said, what if the system in play does it on purpose to keep us fighting so they can keep the control? And that kind of makes you think, doesn't it? If the system that's in play keeps us fighting about gender equality and racial equality, you know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, they're pulling the guitar strings like a puppet, and we're all sitting there doing the marionette dance.
So since not everyone is born with the same advantages, and some people are disadvantaged by systemic de facto issues produced by decades of discriminatory laws and government negligence that hold them back along the lines of race, gender, and sexuality, how are we supposed to achieve equality? How do we fight for it? A humanist or true equality advocate like Roma Army would say that to achieve equality, no one gets special treatment. A true equality movement would give equal priority to everyone.
This is where the argument gets really, really complex. One would argue to achieve equality, nobody gets special treatment. But then one would also argue either no one gets it or everyone gets it. And that's where the argument lies at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? And this is not discrimination. This is just straight up some stuff to make you think. Either nobody gets special treatment or everyone gets it. That's just how it's going to be. Or here's a thought, and this is a brilliant thought. The people who do get it because they've been oppressed for a long enough time. So if white people want to feel like, oh, hey, where's our oppression points? Where? I'll give it a couple, like 50, 60 plus years of everyone else giving you crap for a couple centuries, and then maybe they might let us in. And that's not self-hate, that's just the goddamn truth. So there are two sides to this argument. One, is it fair that women and men and minorities and trans homosexuals, etc., have had to face oppression for all these years? No. But people who are born into a society who have not learned that systematic hate, who are being treated like they already learned it, is ridiculous, because then they grow up being hated on for not even hating in the first place, which then causes them to hate. So then the cycle never ends. I mean, it's a no-brainer when you think about it, but hey, I'm just some autistic rambling on YouTube with some random video on YouTube. Excuse me.
This might be equal, but is it fair? Enter
No, that's the thing about YouTube.
the advocate like Roma Army would say that to achieve equality, no one gets special treatment. A true equality movement would give equal priority to everyone. This might be equal, but is it fair? Enter
It may not be fair, but true equality may, at the end of the day, not exist, because there are going to be some issues, and it's a very rare circumstance where it's not going to be equal, even if you try to be equal. You get what I'm saying? And the whole trans athlete thing is a perfect example of this. If you allow trans people to compete in the gender they're being transitioned into, what have you, then men are going to dominate women's sports just like they dominated women in the 50s, and it's not going to be pretty, which is completely unfair to women and the fairness of sport. But if you call them out on that bullshit, people look at you like you're a trans bigot and shit, even though you support trans rights. Which is kind of unfair to both sides of the argument, which is why I said that trans people should have their own sports league. Like, have at it. But the thing of it is, there's not enough trans athletes to have a league. So, shit.
Mr. John Rawls and his seminal book, A Theory of Justice. Rawls, a man I despised as a political science student, but who I've come to appreciate in the years since, was one of the most influential political philosophers of the 20th century. In his 1971 book, he creates a theory in the social contract tradition of Locke and Hobbes called Justice as Fairness, where he challenges his readers to engage in a thought experiment. He says, imagine you have the opportunity to redesign society from scratch. But the trick is, you have no idea what kind of role you'll play in it. You have zero knowledge of your sex, race, class, nationality, or individual tastes. You could be the white daughter of a successful orthodontist or the son of a recently settled Syrian refugee family. Now, with this knowledge, or lack thereof, what kind of society would you create? To avoid belonging to a severely disadvantaged group, would you mitigate any risks that might place you in such a position? Let's use the example of the lawmakers who moved to ban abortion in Alabama in 2019. Of the 25 who voted yes to the ban, all of them were men. The issue of abortion has a minute impact on their own person, and these men were acting solely based on ideology. But place these lawmakers behind the veil of ignorance, not knowing whether they may be a poor woman who has an unwanted pregnancy and doesn't have the means to support or take care of that baby. would they make the same decision?
Exactly. Don't even get me started. I believe abortion should be legal within reason.
That remains to be seen. For Rawls, however, to avoid the risks of systemic disadvantage, one would create a system that maximizes the social and economic benefits of the least well-off in society. He develops two principles of fairness. The first being equal basic liberties embodied in the Constitution, and the second being fair equality of opportunity, which states, social and economic inequalities are to satisfy two conditions. A, they are to be attached to offices and positions open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity.
Well, the bigger argument, YouTube, I would make is that if you're born into a wealthy life, are you going to work as hard for it as, say, someone else who grew up poor and had to fight for what they have today? So, attached to offices and positions open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity. You know what I'm saying? That's just it. If the person born into privilege works just as hard for their money as the person who was born without it, then that is what they would call a fair opportunity, I would think. They both have the opportunity to work hard, so they both do it. But the way they came up wasn't so fair. One grew up less rich than the other. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of layers to this, man.
And B, they are to be the greatest benefit of the least advantaged members of society. This is otherwise known as the difference principle.
Well, think about it. There are people out there who aren't afraid to make an honest dollar. And if you grow up in a certain situation, you do what you can to do what you can. You know what I'm saying? Someone says, we need you to screw the lids on the toothpaste. Think you can do that? Yeah. So you're sitting on a factory line. For like an oblongs reference. That was.
Second principle of justice. No inequality in society, in distribution, no difference in wealth is to be tolerated unless that difference works for the benefit of the worst off group in the society. It's a very dramatic principle, the second principle.
Here, equality is the goal, but equity is the means. As Martin Brothenbrenner notes, Rawls suggests that equity, conceived of as fairness, with whatever degree of inequality individuals in this hypothetical original position and with lexical utility functions would approve, would serve as a means to increase the welfare of the society's least advantaged members, whose identity, when the vote was taken, would be completely unknown. Of course, this vote to design a just social order is only that, a design, a blueprint. Rawls confronts us with the problem of transferring the goal of an equal society into our current society, which is rife with inequality and lawmakers who don't always legislate with a commitment to justice. So how can we realistically reach that goal of equality?
Only when liberty has been protected to the full are you entitled to consider the economic questions raised by the second principle.
What do you yourself regard as the chief shortcomings of the theory?
I think that Rawls relies too much on rather technical arguments, appealing in a very learned way to recent work in economics about what people in his original position would do. And I think those arguments are to some degree flawed. That is, doesn't seem to be inevitable that people in his original position would come up with just what he does. I think what's more important, and what I wish he had stressed more, is the deep theory that underlies the use of this device, the sort of thing that you ask for when you say, quite rightly, why should what people decide in this rather strange situation, why should that have to do with justice. So I think it's a weakness that he, as it were, hides the real quest, appears to hide the real quest. The usefulness, the importance of the book is not exhausted by the particular arguments it makes. It presents us with an enterprise and says to us, look, if these conclusions are appealing to you, if the idea that we must think about justice by thinking about them through these devices of fairness is at all appealing.
The lack of clarity about how this would play out caused a ton of discord in the academic world. Some mistook his justification for inequalities to benefit the least advantaged as another version of trickle-down economics. Libertarians like Robert Nozick viewed it as an attempt to bolster more government interference and encourage free riders to abuse the system. Rawls himself amended his theory of justice numerous times in the years that followed. But although his socio-economic vision may be a bit lofty, I think the heart of it, which asks us to accept that there are people who fare terribly in our society and to put ourselves in the shoes of the least well-off, is incredibly important when thinking about social justice, especially when it comes to Roma Army's conception of true equality and her position on fourth-wave feminism.
I would like to talk about the difference.
Oh, yeah, because people like Roma Army say that fourth wave feminism is toxic for feminist movement in general. And you literally see that there are some people who, even though they're in a first world country, they're living second or third world status. And anyone who tries to speak up for that or speak up against feminazis or the system that's broken people is automatically altered out as some loony bin or some crazy asshole.
Between male victims and female victims in society, i.e., how we treat them. An audience laughed at Terry Crews's story of sexual assault. Nobody ever dares to question a woman's story anymore, which in return has actually added to their oppression because men don't want to hire them in the workplace because all they have to do is say one thing and that's it. Men don't stand a freaking chance.
That is a stereotype, unfortunately, that does exist to some degree where men are afraid to hire women for the workforce. Not just because some of them may be sexist, that does happen, but also because all a woman has to do is say, he sexually harassed me by looking at me. You know what I'm saying? It's a very complex system. On one hand, she came to the office wearing, the work office wearing a slutty outfit, showing off her body, and the wrong guy looked, so he's a creep, you know, knowing that work office has what they would call an appropriate work attire kind of thing. So if you're working a desk job in a cubicle kind of situation and they want you to dress more professional, less show-offy and slutatious, as they would call it, which calling it slutatious dressing is bullshit. You know, you're slut-shaming women who want to feel comfortable in their own skin. That's a whole other argument. Don't even get me started. But here's the thing of it, YouTube. You know full on well that dressing like that is going to get guys to look. So it's like, they're, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? That'd be like if, and to put this from a guy's perspective, ladies, let's just say that the roll cards were reversed, right? The roll cards are reversed. And ladies, it was the hottest guy you'd seen showing off his muscles, walking up to you, flirting with you and shit. And the second you looked, the second you acknowledged his flirting, he said that's sexual harassment and it got you fired from your job. You would fucking hate it. You'd be like, what? That's not to say that sexual harassment doesn't happen in the workforce. And sadly, it shouldn't. It's sad that it happens. You know what I'm saying? But there are people who scream oppression and sexual harassment when it really doesn't happen. And it's like, well, ain't that a bitch? You know, it's kind of like if your school has a dress code that says no cleavage, but like the hottest chick comes to school showing off her boobs, and the second you look, you're the creep. And You're getting called into the principal's office for sexually harassing her when she's totally breaking school dress code. But hey, what the fuck, do I know? Smart ass.
See that with male victims all the time. Where's the proof? Where's the proof? Well, I don't believe you. I need to see proof.
And because we have male victims, this also takes away credibility from legit female victims. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. There are some women who lie about sexual assault and sexual harassment just to get attention and boo-hoo points. And yeah, it sucks. Because there are some innocent guys who go to jail for that shit. It's disgusting that there are women out there who take advantage of the system like that, but then systematically whine when guys abuse the system. It's like, well, here's the thing that it's slick, which makes it harder for a lot of women to prove their legit cases. And then on top of it, you know what I'm saying? This is what happens when you live in a Western world where women and men both have privilege and both are victims. Who's to say that the guy says she's lying about it and she's full of shit and then makes up some story? And then, you know what I'm saying? So dude, really touchy subjects on this video.
But women, I stand with victims.
Terry Crews thanks the woman of the #MeToo movement for giving him courage. The courage they showed gave me the courage to come forward with his story, the Brooklyn Nine-Nine star said. Well, here's the thing of it. There are some people who feel like they can't share it because it might get told you're lying about to get attention, or they feel like they might get demasculated. When it comes to men getting abused versus women, at least women, to be fair, are coddled and respected, and it's handled professionally, and they're taken more seriously. If men get abused, we're treated as disposable muscles, so who cares what we think? But now he's just mansplaining. This is a logical fallacy called false cause. The Me Too movement equals societal neglect of male victims. No, it doesn't. I think the Me Too movement was created to show people that, hey, men get abused too, and we all need to work together to be a little bit nicer to each other. And that's why they called it Me Too. But then, of course, some asshole had to infiltrate it and make it about special treatment, and it's just... So what started off as a good cause to help people relate to each other turned into a poor pity me party. Well, they're getting attention. How come I'm not? They're like, shut the fuck up.
So let's get into that. Chloe raises a lot of valid points when it comes to men's position in society. She brings up men's disproportionate suicide rate, their treatment under child family support laws, their disproportionate likelihood to occupy positions in dangerous workplaces, the neglect of male victims of sexual assault, and so on. But if we're to take Rawls's theory of justice as fairness and apply it to Roma Army's line of logic, her equality movement doesn't benefit the population at large and will most likely result in even more.
Oh, okay. So because Roma Army's definition of equality doesn't benefit the society at large, you know where that's flawed? I'll tell you why. Because the society at large would rather sit comfortably with women as being the victims, as men being the causes of it. Not sometimes it happens the other way around. And acknowledging that men can be victims too makes people feel uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? And that being said, YouTube, society at large can kiss it because that's so sexist. The idea that women want to scream for advocacy, but then turn around and let society continually force them into the whole victim role. And when you say shit like that, we're not downplaying victims here. Women have been victims of some really fucked up shit. Like Roma Army, for instance, with her stupid ex-boyfriend. And here's the thing of it. The fact that she still advocates for men's rights, despite that, shows she's a bigger person than you are. Who the fucker is this chick, dude? Oh, it doesn't benefit the society at large. The society at large would rather see men as the universal hero / perpetrator and women as the universal damsel in distress victim. Fuck that.
Inequality. By using equality as both an end and a means, she assumes that everyone starts off in the same place.
Okay, just because she wants equality for all, I think Roma Army is aware of the fact that we all start off in a rough place. Hence, she said it in her videos. She grew up in a third world country where women were way more oppressed than they are in a Western society today. So I think she's aware of the fact that we all don't start off equal. But just because we all don't start off as equal with our circumstances doesn't mean we can't have equality. I think that's kind of fucked, to be honest. So is that what the person making this video is stating? So the person in this video is against people with disabilities having equality. Is she? What Roma Army is saying, and that's what this person making the video about her seems to misunderstand, is that just because we all start off as different doesn't mean we shouldn't have equality like everyone else. Like whether you're in a wheelchair or not, if you're able to hold down a job and you want to hold down a job and you want to make money, you should be allowed to. If you want to join the military and you're trans, who gives a shit, man? You want to serve this country and you're qualified for it, well then give me America. Fuck yeah. Ugh. There's this video by a chick named Broe de Chanel. I don't know who this chick is. YouTube suggested the video. I clicked on it. I started watching like 3 or 4 minutes of it, and I'm like, no, we're doing a video response to this. You're still going on YouTube? Awesome. All right.
It's that everyone is equally oppressed under this faceless evil called society.
Well, oppression happens to everyone in some degree or another, so even if it's not as severe as someone else's, it still happens. So yes, that is true. When we try to fight against society, you get told a bunch of shit like this chick's doing right now. Like, you speak out against the system and the man, you get labeled a crazy or loony, or he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's just autistic. And fuck off with that.
What she gets wrong about fourth wave feminism is that it's no longer about seeking the exact same status as men within our current social order. It's about fighting the systemic oppression of people on the basis of gender, race, disability, age, and so on.
If it's about that, then make it about that. But whenever someone radicalizes, and that's not fourth wave feminism, dear. That's called being a human rights activist. I thank you. Okay, let's Google fourth wave feminism and see what it really says. Let's see. So I'm doing a video response to Broy de Chanel, TikTok Roma Army, and the politics of equality. The politics of equality. Fourth wave feminism. Fourth wave feminism is a phase of feminism that began around 2012 and is characterized by a focus of the empowerment of women and the use of internet tools centered on the first, second, and third waves of feminism. Combining all the waves of feminism. So it's like being a Super Saiyan. You go Super Saiyan 1, Super Saiyan 2, and this is Super Saiyan 4. Women's Oh, come on, that was funny. The Saiyans get different colored hair. Anyone? Dragon Ball Z reference? Okay, no. Okay, so that's not. She said it wasn't about empowering women. It was about doing all that other shit. That's not what this article is saying right here. In fact, I will cite what I found right here on the internet and put it in the chat for you to see. No. Fourth wave feminism and all forms of feminism have been infiltrated by these radical Nazis who hate men because they haven't had some good dick in a while, and all men they've dated have treated them like shit.
The reason it's called feminism and not humanism is because it works against the rigid gender roles that contribute to women's de facto disadvantage.
That'd be society, which you said it wasn't society, but that's exactly society. Calling it human rights activism or humanism would make it more equal, wouldn't it? But calling it feminism systematically places women in that role once again. And there are people out there who say that the gender wage gap is real. And yes, it is real in some parts of the world in certain jobs. There are some parts that have equal pay, and there are some jobs that don't. So the gender wage gap is real and it isn't real, depending on the job and the scenario and who you're working for, etc. But femininity as a sign of weakness, disproportionate domestic sexual violence, women of color at even greater social economic disadvantages, wage gap, it's real. Yes, all that stuff is horrible and real, and it happens, and it's ridiculous. The system that's in place sucks. Lack of access to political or cultural appropriateness, lack of economic recognition for domestic work, women's work, etc. You want to talk about femininity as a weakness. Yeah, that's the truth, okay? If you're seen to support being feminine, it's seen as a weakness. Growing up as a kid in the 90s, that's all I got. Oh, I bet you throw like a girl, huh? You hear shit like that growing up. It's dumb. Domestic and graphic violence of this nature happens to both sides. I hate to say it. Women of color and do get placed at social and economic disadvantages, but it also depends on the situation you're in. You know, the wage gap is real and it isn't real. It depends on the job and who you're working for. Lack of access to political and cultural apparatus. Well, some people are just misinformed or don't care to know how someone else sees things. And it may make them judgmental, maybe just because they're used to the way things are, and they just don't have the need for that knowledge. I get it, but as long as they're not going out of their way to harass someone else for having a different culture, who cares? Lack of economic recognition for domestic work. Lack of economic recognition for domestic work, i.e., women's work, etc. Yeah, there are some women who don't get recognized. There are some women who do not get recognized for the same work a man does, and it's disgusting when that happens. But in that same situation, if you have a white dude and a black dude who both grow up in broken homes and they both make something of themselves, the white dude's going to get less recognition because, oh, he got white privilege, but both grew up with equal opportunity to fail, equal opportunity to fuck up, and equal broken homes. So you want to talk about fairness and equality. That's not to just acknowledge anything because white privilege is a thing, but at the same time, it's kind of systematically bullshit for all sides to some degree. There's a lot of arguments that make people a lot of uncomfortable conversations to have, but fuck racism.
These gender roles also apply to men. They contribute to their inability to seek help for depression on the premise that emotion is a sign of weakness.
Yep. That is pretty true to some extent. I mean, I can't argue with you on that. A lot of the stuff this chick was talking about, I'm like, who the fuck is this broad? But then she gets to this point and it's like, yeah, that is a system that men have to live with. If you show emotion, it's a sign of weakness. And that's true for all men across all races. Let's get that 100.
Femininity.
And the sexist undertone that society has, that showing emotions is a sign of weakness, it's a sign of being a pussy, as they would say. Almost done with this live stream, almost done with this video.
Neglect of male sexual assault victims is based on the premise that men are innately sexual and dominant.
Well, there is neglect of female sexual assault victims because of the bitches who lie about it to get innocent men thrown in jail. And men are neglected on these cases too because of that stereotype that all men want is sex. So at the end of the day, the results end up producing the same outcome, but they're caused by different reactions and different ways it's done, I guess.
Beings. The overrepresentation of men in dangerous fields is because women were historically barred from these sectors due to the expectation that they aren't biologically capable of functioning in harsh environments. And the list goes on. Fourth wave feminism seeks to restructure society from the proverbial veil of ignorance and ensure that the future is one in which people of all races, classes, genders, and creeds have equality of opportunity and the ability to be liberated by one's identity rather than restricted by it. A society where it's acceptable for men to express emotion, where masculinity and femininity are valued for their respective strengths, and where people's economic position doesn't push them into dangerous and precarious workplaces.
Life can be dangerous, and women and men have to adapt to their surroundings. Enough said on that.
That is a truly equal society. But it can't be achieved if we use equality as the means.
Yes, it can be achieved because if women are given the same opportunity to work in the same dangerous fields as men, if they're equally as qualified, then I say go for it. To sit there and say that if equality is the pursuit, then you can't achieve it. Bullshit. If there was equality for both sides, then I wouldn't be sitting here doing these gender relation rants. Now would I? It's appalling to think that there are women out there who don't support equality until it comes to their side getting fucked with. And that sounds like this chick right here doing this video, to be perfectly fair with you.
The means need to be fair. They need to account for the least advantaged people. Before we achieve.
Just because you're trying to fight for equality doesn't mean you're not taking into consideration the unfair advantages that some people have to grow up with. That is the biggest crock of crap. The verbal gymnastics on this.
True equality, we have to account for the people who are institutionally marginalized on the basis of their identity. If trans women have immense difficulty entering the workforce, live economically precarious lives as a result, and are
okay. And then with that, seriously,
disproportionately targeted in violent hate crimes, then we need to reform the systems that contribute to this. If Indigenous women experience disproportionate levels of poverty and homelessness as a result of centuries of disenfranchisement and cultural genocide, if they're heavily policed and overrepresented in the prison system, and disappear at alarmingly high rates compared to non-Indigenous women, then we need to reform the systems that contributed to this. If Black men receive longer prison sentences than non-Black men for the same crime and are killed by the very institutions sworn to protect them, then we need to reform the systems that contribute to this. Sure.
Okay, nobody is saying that these horrible things don't happen, because they do. The system in place sucks. Okay, it does. It freaking sucks. So what do? You fix the system that's broken, and that doesn't mean give everyone else that oppressed you oppression, because that's not going to make it any better. It's just going to make it worse. Especially when people are being born into that, not knowing that their ancestors caused it. They learn it. You know what I'm saying? Getting hated for something you didn't do, but your ancestors did, kind of thing. It's a bitch like that, but that's kind of how it plays out sometimes. I'll wrap this stream up here because I got shit to do.
Sure, all lives matter de jure, but de facto,
And no, saying all lives matter is bullshit. There are some people who just should not be alive. You want to say all lives matter. Well, what if Adolf Hitler were still alive? Would you say his life matters? No, you wouldn't. You can't say all lives matter. That's bullshit. Fuck white supremacy. Fuck racism.
systems tell these people that their lives matter less. That's why we need social movements like feminism and Black Lives Matter. If we give equal attention to people whose identities aren't policed heavily, who aren't excluded from the workforce, who aren't victims of police brutality, then we continue to tell the most disadvantaged people that their problems aren't important, that they're no worse off than the rest of us. So it's fine for Chloe to talk about men's issues, but in her effort to stand out as one of the good ones, a position that has amassed her over 600,000 loyal followers, a line of merchandise, and endless praise from her male audience, she presents contemporary feminism as the other, something alien and dangerous to the well-being of men. By oversimplifying,
well, I mean, when you got 7 million women on TikTok screaming hashtag kill all men, it's a bit concerning as a male. There are 7 million women out there who hate men so much they want to murder us. It's ridiculous.
And mischaracterizing the movement, she incites underlying frustrations within her viewers and sets them against.
You know how frustrating it is for women everywhere to be labeled a radical feminazi when they're one of the good ones?
Against a movement that will actually benefit them in the long run. It's just a waiting game. As Kimberly Crenshaw says,
life is a waiting game, to be honest.
Treating different things the same can generate as much inequality as
Treating different things the same can generate as much inequality as treating the same things differently. That really makes you think. So it goes back to the argument: either you treat everyone like they're special, or you don't. Or, dude.
Treating the same things differently.
So we had a really good discussion here. Got a couple of crows flying outside my window. That's pretty sick, bro. Anyways, YouTube, I'm all for racial equality and gender equality. 1000%. And sometimes achieving that, you have to have really uncomfortable conversations that acknowledge uncomfortable truths. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. I'll catch you later.